What is going on, y'all? Everybody who is watching, everybody who will be watching, uh, or hearing this later on, I am back for another Tuesday Table Talk. Honestly, I am super excited. Feels like I haven't done a live video in forever. If you're listening to this later on Spotify, what I do is I go live on Instagram, and then I take the audio version and I put it on Spotify and vice versa. If you're hearing this, I'm also talking to the people that are going to be hearing this on Spotify as well. But like I said, I'm super excited to be back with another Tuesday Table Talk. Like I said, I feel like it's been forever. Life's been crazy, which I'll get into in a little bit. But just excited for another episode. Again, this mission here, or this thing that I've started, is just simply just sharing what God has put on my heart. Simply sharing what I felt like He's given me first, and then I not share everything sometimes, but a lot of the times He gives me, I feel like, aren't just for myself. I feel like it's for other people as well. So what I want to do is encourage other people. What I want to do is just uplift. So again, just excited to be back on here with another episode. Tonight, the title of my podcast, the title of my message, the title, whatever you want to call it, is called Thirst Trap. And I kind of rolled around. If you know me by now, you know that I rolled around with a couple titles about what it was going to be. Hey, what's good, Catherine? I rolled around with a couple titles of what I wanted to name this. And usually I take things and I make them super complicated instead of just making it simple. So tonight I just decided to go simple and just call it Thirst Trap. So hopping into this joint, of course, for the people, I got to give background. I got to give context. Y'all know that's how I roll. That's how I am. But for any older folk that may be listening to this, and even if younger people, whoever may be listening to this, is not up to date culturally, what thirsty is, what thirst trap is, there's a lot of definitions, a lot of crazy definitions. I went on Urban Dictionary earlier as I was preparing for this podcast episode, and just it's a lot of definitions, but I try to make it as simple as possible to try to pertain to my message. So just getting started here, talking about thirsty. So here's the simplest definition, again, of what I found on Urban Dictionary. Meaning too eager to get something, or it means that you're desperate. And a thirst trap, any statement or picture, but in this case, it's going to be a statement, used to intentionally create attention or thirst. So with that being said, talking about thirst trap, I want to talk tonight about one of the greatest thirst traps in history. Now, thirst trap, again, has this negative connotation. It in culture today, I don't even know if it's used really that much anymore. It was like a couple years ago where it was like everything was thirsty. You're thirsty. Oh, it's a thirst trap. But with that concept in mind, we're talking about one of the greatest thirst traps in history. And I want to flip the connotation on its head a little bit, because again, it has that negative connotation, that negative thought or that input to it. But tonight I want to kind of see it in a positive light and talk tonight out of John 4, talking about Jesus and the Samaritan woman. And normally I try to make these stories simple, make them ghettofied. I don't really know what the right terminology is. Make them hood. I really don't know. I really try to just make them simple, try to make them relatable. Because sometimes I feel like the Bible is just not big. I don't want to say that, but sometimes it can get lost, or it's too big for people. So they just needed to be broken down for it to be simple. But tonight, if you don't mind, I'm actually just going to read. It's like 18 verses, but for the context, I just want to read because I just want to talk about and break down a couple things. And bear with me. My throat's been a little scratchy. Lord knows. But just bear with me as I read this. Again, I'm reading out of John 4. You can find the whole story of Jesus and the Samaritan woman there. It's like 40 verses. But I just wanted to read 18 verses here, and then we just gonna, like always, I'm just gonna dive into it and talk about really what God has put on my heart today. It says that Jesus knew the Pharisees had heard that he was baptizing and making more disciples than John. Although Jesus himself didn't baptize them, his disciples did. So he left Judea and returned to Galilee. He had to go through Samaria on the way. Eventually, he came to the Samaritan village to Sychar, near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from a long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone at the time because the disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. The woman was surprised, for Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. She said to Jesus, "You are a Jew. I am a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink?" Jesus replied, "If you only knew the gift God has for us and who you are speaking to, you would ask me, and I would give you living water." "But sir, you don't have a rope or a bucket," she said, "and this well is very deep. Where would you get this living water? And besides, do you think you're greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us this well? How can you offer better water than he and his sons and his animals enjoyed?" Jesus replied, "Anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again. But those who drink the water that I give, will never be thirsty again. It becomes fresh, bubbling, spring within them, giving them eternal life." "Please, sir," the woman said, "give me this water. Then I'll never be thirsty again, and I won't have to come back here to get water." "Go and get your husband," Jesus told her. "I don't have a husband," the woman said. Jesus said, "You're right. You don't have a husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and you aren't even married to the man that you are living with now. You certainly spoke the truth." So again, I'm just going to stop there. It's like a whole 35, 40 verses, and I encourage you to go back and read it. But again, we're talking about thirst trap. So I want to take a couple significant things out of this text. First, it says that Jews and Samaritans were never to mix. And excuse me, I just want to read this for a second, because it said she was a Samaritan, a race hated by the Jews because of their half-breed status and idol worship. And if that wasn't enough, it was against social norms for women and men to converse in public. But Jesus knew this was a golden opportunity for ministry. Instead of turning away, he asked her for a drink. So again, that's 2 kind of points in there that are kind of heavy. Is that first, men and women never were to really talk or converse in public. So not only is Jesus one, I think it's interesting, number one, that he doesn't even have to really take this route. For Jews and Samaritans, they didn't really want to mix. Again, the Jews looked at the Samaritans as these half-breeds. So what they decided to do was, normally they would take this longer route. They would go, instead of going through Samaria, which would be the quickest way to get to their destination, they would go all the way around, because they didn't want to be in the presence of them. They didn't want to encounter them. They didn't want to talk to them, whatever the case is. So not only I find it interesting that the Bible said that he had to go to Samaria. He didn't have to, in the context of everyone else who had gone to where he wanted to go simply passed by, or simply went around Samaria. But in terms of his mission, in terms of what God had called him to do, he had to go. And 2, again, that the men and women normally didn't converse in public. And 3 is that this woman was out during the day. And most, if not any, or most, if not all, usually went to the well during the evening because of the cooler temps. So clearly, this woman didn't want any attention. So tonight, for this episode of Tuesday Table Talk, I want to give a different perspective of the text. Because often this text is used for a salvation message, but the truth is that Christians, the ones that know Jesus, still get thirsty sometimes too. This woman was thirsty. She was not only thirsty for a physical drink, but she was thirsty for a spiritual drink, which maybe she knew at the time or maybe she didn't. But whether she knew or not is not important. Is that the inner thirst that she had in her soul was the one that Jesus came to fulfill, not the physical. So the point I have is this: is that in the scripture, in that text, Jesus is talking about if you drink of this water, you'll never thirst again. So when I talk about when Christians thirst or they still get tired or they want to drink, does that mean that Christ was lying? No, that does not mean he was lying or that he was not telling the truth or that there's some sort of thing that we're missing. I simply believe that he meant that when thirst comes, we wouldn't have to walk anywhere else again, and that he would be the one that would never run dry. So before I jump in, I want to talk about, or as I'm jumping in, excuse me, I want to talk about what causes thirst. Well, thirst is usually caused when water or salt is depleted from the body, then the brain signals for water. So in short, it's usually any movement or activity. In the same way, physical movement causes physical thirst. Emotional, mental, and spiritual movement in life creates thirst for our souls. Now, I want to point this out is because the issue isn't the thirst. It's the well that we go to fill up. You see, for the Samaritan woman, it was the well of relationships. If we're honest, we tend to fill our buckets at different wells other than Jesus. It's easy to get tempted. It's easy to get distracted. Again, this is where I'm talking about where Christians are thirsty because life. Let me just dive into a couple more points and then I'll expand on that. Okay, so I said for the Samaritan woman, it was the well of relationships. And if we're honest, we tend to fill our buckets at different wells other than Jesus sometimes. Maybe it's the well of relationships. Maybe it's the well of social media. Maybe it's the well of accomplishments, or maybe it's the well of something else. So instead of seeking to eliminate the thirst, in which we waste so much time, sometimes we seek to eliminate. It's like for a better, I guess, revelation or something to tie it to. It's like the topic of sex. A lot of times we're taught or we're brought up in church as saying that this whole subject of sex is bad. So we're taught to eliminate this whole thing of the sex drive. But the sex drive isn't bad. It's just used in the wrong context. So in the same way, we waste so much time to seek to eliminate the thirst that we have in our souls, which is just wasting time. So instead of doing that, what we need to do is we need to change the water source instead. So when I was looking earlier today, and really, I apologize for those who are hearing me on Instagram or watching me on Instagram. I'm reading straight from my notes because week's been kind of crazy, and I'm literally just got finished with this today. So really just reading kind of point for point from my notes. But when I was researching today or really thinking about what I wanted to talk about today in terms of thirst, I thought about the water sources that we have all around us. So I wanted to highlight 3 examples of quote unquote water sources that we know are not good for us. So one is ocean water. And why is it not good for us to drink ocean water? Well, it's toxic because the body is unable to get rid of all the salt that comes from this water. Too much salt shuts down the kidneys. So then I want to go into lake water. Lake water, something if you were, it could be not necessarily lake water, but any other types of body of water that is not around the ocean. Now, these waters are dangerous to us because these waters can be filled with bacteria, viruses that can harm your body as well. And I want to talk about soda as the third one. Now, we're talking about water sources. Technically, soda has water in it. So technically, it's a source. For the point of the example, just play along with me. But we're talking about water sources in terms of, okay, soda. So why is soda bad? Well, it contains lots of sugar. And it causes additional thirst. It actually dehydrates the body even more and pulls out all the water. So again, the issue with these sources of water is that they either kill you or they cause you to thirst again. We know that when we drink these sources, that death may not be immediate following a drink. But if we keep drinking and we keep going back to that well, eventually it will take our life. The same goes for the wells we run to, or we run after. The first drink may not get us, but eventually we'll die because of the toxic source. And this is the point, is that just because there's water present at a well doesn't mean it was, or it has the makeup to satisfy our souls. I want to repeat that one more time. Because just because there's water present at a well doesn't mean it has the makeup to satisfy our souls. And I want to talk about this because not all wells are bad in nature. We have different wells. I talked about the wells of social media. I talked about the wells of relationships, or romantic relationships to be specific. Or I talked about the wells of anything else, sports. It could be anything. But not all wells are bad. There's wells of family. There's wells of friends. Those aren't bad in nature themselves. But when they become the main water supply, they become just as toxic. We only feel refreshed truly when we drink clean filtered water. And why is that? I want to highlight some points of what water does to the human body. Water gets rid of toxins. It regulates our body temps. It protects tissues and the spinal cord, and also joints. It helps brain function. Now, as we're talking about these physical benefits of drinking water, I think it's also talking about, we can also relate these things to Christ. Christ gets rid of toxins in our body. He regulates the way our body moves and the way our body functions. He protects everything around the brain or our tissues in that, and he helps our brain function. So the question is, why do we keep drinking water, or why do we keep going to the source or going to wells looking for water? These three really main points of this is that there's usually a false sense of fulfillment. If I could talk tonight, that would be wonderful. But there's usually a false sense of fulfillment. Again, I want to go back to the example of soda, because soda gives this false sense of fulfillment, as that, man, that really quenched my thirst. If you're out running and you're out sweating and you're out doing these activities, whatever it may be, and you go and get a cold glass of soda, you think it's really going to be the greatest thing in the world. You really think it's going to satisfy you. You really think it's going to be fantastic. You think it's going to be everything you need to quench your thirst. But again, I just talked about how soda has this false sense of fulfillment in the same way, is that it really just draws out the water, really dehydrates us even more. So in the same way is that these wells that we go to, whether they may be romantic relationships, or whether they may be social media, whether they may be family, friends that we go to, again, not saying the family and friends are bad in a sense, but we make them the main well. We make them the main source of where we get our water from, or where we draw our strength from. So when we do these things, the enemy really is the mastermind of this, of creating a false sense of fulfillment, is that these things will give us lasting pleasure. These things will satisfy. These things will quench the thirst of our souls. With these things, we don't need anything else, which is not true. So with that, the second point of why we keep running back to other wells other than Jesus is because it's easy and quick. Let's be honest here, as Christians, it's not always easy to open our Bible. It's not always easy to call up a friend. It's not always easy to ask for prayer. It's not always easy to put on a worship song. It's not always easy, but it's easy for me to turn on social media. It's easy for me to hit up that girl that I like, or it's easy to look for a distraction. It's easy and it's quick, right? So in the same way, that's the reasons why we keep running back to other wells that never satisfy, wells that never do this. And the third point here is that it forces us to not address the pain or the brokenness inside. And I think, man, when I was doing this earlier and writing down these points, is that one really stuck with me. Is that when we go to the well of Jesus, when we go to Jesus, it forces us to realize our brokenness. It forces us to realize our flaws. It forces us to realize our shortcomings, and where we fall short, not in terms of to condemn us or to shame us, but because we're in light of perfection. We're in light of something that is greater than us, better than us, deeper than us. So the reason why we tend to run to other wells is that these wells don't offer the same depth as Jesus does. These wells don't offer the same level as Jesus does. It's easy to stay on the same level. Again, going relating it back to the second point is that it's easy to stay on the same level as something. So for me, instead of going higher, instead of me running and or chasing after Jesus, it's easy for me to sit at a well of social media. It's easy for me to sit at a well. Again, I keep bringing up social media, but even a well of Netflix and Hulu, even a well of video games, even a well of just watching TV, whatever it may be. We look to these other wells to really satisfy us. We look to these other wells, bad habits, bad mindsets, bad ways that we talk to ourselves, bad ways that we talk to each other, gossip, fear, whatever point you want to put in there, they're all wells that we all run to at some point. And again, these three main points that I just talked about is that it brings a false sense of fulfillment. It's easy and quick, and it forces us to not address the pain or the brokenness inside. Is all reasons why we run to these wells. And so, one of the things that I do here on Tuesday Table Talk is I talk about things that are relatable. I never want to talk about something that I'm not dealing with, or I never want to talk about something that's not relevant to me. So really, what brought this whole thirst trap idea really was to the point where life has been crazy for me lately. My mental health has kind of gone down in the toilet, to be honest. I've gone through relationship failures to where relationships broke off, and relationships that I thought would last are not there anymore. And then I've gone through even a more serious situation, I guess you could say, of experiencing the death of my friend. And all these different things, when I talk about the thirst, as we go through life, we become thirsty, right? Because life, it pulls us. Life is hard. We go through all these challenges. So it's movement. We're moving from here to there. We're doing this and that. And again, movement creates thirst. So with all these different things that have been going on in my life, I've been thirsty. And to be honest, Jesus really hasn't been the well that I've been going to. Jesus really hasn't been the first well that I've been looking to. I've been looking towards other distractions. I've been looking towards other things that I thought would, I guess, fulfill me, to be honest, or things that I thought that I put false expectations on these other wells, or I made these other wells in place of God, or I made these other wells in place of Jesus. So it really got to a point where my soul was tired. I think it was last week. I think it was the week before. I think it had to be last week. But I was on my way to work and I was driving, just reflecting on all the events that was going on and being like, God, like, man, I'm just tired. I'm tired of everything. I feel beat up. I feel sore. I feel this and that. And really, I love the way that God speaks, to me at least, because sometimes I wish it was this easy, write something on the wall and it'd be simple and I can understand. But a lot of times it's very simple. So really, the way that God spoke to me really is just, He said, "What well are you drinking from?" And it may not be anything that really moves you. It may not be anything that jumps off the page. It may not be something that makes somebody want to shout on a Sunday. But for me, it's easy for me to get off track. It's easy for my focus to not be on something where it needs to be. So for me, when He said that in His still just small prompting, it really just brought everything into focus for me. And He said, "What well are you drinking from?" And I had to go back and I said, "God, man, I've been drinking from this well. I've been drinking from that well. I've been drinking from that well. Man, I'm sorry." And I think going back to the Samaritan woman, one of the beautiful things again is that she went during the daytime, again, to not be seen by other people, because she had 5 husbands and the man that she was living with was not her husband right now. So I think that she was ashamed. I know she was ashamed. I know she was embarrassed. So she went out during the hottest points of the day. And I thought about how often we find ourselves in that same situation. Is that we we take drinks from other wells, or we slip up, or we get thirsty and we go over here and we do this, we go over here and again we're just drinking from other wells, and we're embarrassed or we're ashamed of what we've done, and instead of running back to the source, running back to the true life giver, the true well, we instead just continue to hide in shame, or we continue just to go back and drink from the same well. And another thing that stands out to me in this story, but really was relevant to the way God spoke to me last week, is that this woman wasn't met with, you should know better. This woman wasn't met with, well, your sin disqualifies you from ever having a chance to drink from this well. Your past or the fact that you're drinking from other wells doesn't disqualify you from anything else. It wasn't that. She wasn't met with friction. She wasn't met with what's the word I'm looking for? She wasn't met with disdain. Really, it was really just a sign of Jesus just opening his arms and saying, look, man, I know. And this is really the point where God spoke to me last week, is that when I've been searching for drinks, or I've been drinking from other wells other than the well of Jesus, is that he said, I know, but it's okay. And I think that's the biggest that's the biggest thing that allows someone to come back to the well of Jesus. And I think we're in this series. For those who don't know, I'm a youth leader as well, and I do that on Wednesday nights. But we're in this series called Prodigal. And we're talking about, we just started this series last week, and we're talking about the prodigal son. And it really, when we're not met with opposition from Jesus, which we never are, but I think we have that fear of, we will be met with opposition instead of Jesus welcoming us with open arms. When we fear that opposition, it keeps us away. It keeps us from coming home. So the biggest thing that this woman was, and really what God was really speaking to me, was that it was okay. And that really gave me the freedom. That really gave me, I really don't know what other words to use that are accurate in the moment, but it really gave me the comfortability, I'll even say the comfortability of coming home, or the comfortability of going back to the well, or the comfortability of putting my bucket back and drawing from the well that it was supposed to draw from in the first place. And so that was really important. The thing about the thirst trap, or I'm talking about this whole title series, or the title of my podcast of Thirst Trap, is that it wasn't a thirst trap at all. Jesus waited for her at her well. He didn't force himself. He didn't stalk her. He didn't follow her to the well. He just simply was there first, and he waited for her to come to the well. And the same thing is that he waits for us at ours, hoping that we see that only he is the one that is living water. So the question isn't whether or not we'll thirst, but rather, will we ask for a drink instead of throwing our empty buckets into a deep well that will never satisfy? And really, as I wrap up this episode and I coming up with a few points, y'all know that I like to make it practical. So the thing is what does that look like? What does sitting at the well of Jesus look like for me and you? And I guarantee it's different for each of us. I guarantee it's not the same, but for me, I wrote down some points, and I think, now, I'm not talking about distractions here. I want to make that very clear, because a lot of times we say, okay, self-care, or we say sitting at the well, let me just turn on my favorite Netflix episode, let me just turn on my favorite TV series, or let me do this and that. No, that's a distraction. Distractions don't satisfy your souls. Distraction only keeps your soul bound, and your soul thirsty. So when I talk about sitting at the well with Jesus, what are those things that refresh your soul? What are those things that allow you to dip your bucket in the well of Jesus and allow him to replenish or refill your soul? So for me, I wrote down a couple of these things, and I said journaling. I said just sitting outside in nature. I said turning off my phone. Again, there's these. I'm sure me and you, we each have these different examples of what sitting at a well at, but I guess that's a challenge for me. That's a challenge for me, and it's a challenge that I want to leave as I about to wrap up this episode. Is that look at the wells in your life. Look at the wells and see where you aren't going back to the well of Jesus. It's an opportunity to really sit at the feet of Jesus. It's an opportunity. I don't really know what anybody really is going through that may listen to this, or that may see this or hear this at a later time. But I don't know about you, but for me, I found my soul really thirsty last week and the last couple of weeks of just everything that life has thrown at me, everything that life has dealt me. So it really came to a point where I had to realize or really look at really look at the wells that I was running to. And man, that's it, man. Um, I thank you guys for tuning into this episode. I feel like this is one of my simpler ones. I feel like this is more of really one of my reflective ones. And again, this is something that happened maybe a couple weeks ago that really inspired this. But for me, I like to sit and chew on things before I really just throw them out. So I could have did an episode last week, but I decided just to post part 3 of the mental health episode that I did with my friend Bree a few weeks ago. And if you guys haven't had a chance or an opportunity to look at that, we went on for 3 hours talking about mental health and what that means for the church and how the church can do better and all these different things. But for those who are listening to this on Spotify, if you guys ever want to see like a video version, or for me just sitting here live on Instagram, you guys can go over to Tuesday Table Talk on Instagram, and you can go back and look at any of the videos there. For those who are listening or watching live on Instagram, or watching this video playback, and you ever just want something to just plug in your ears. I know podcasts are like a big thing now, because it's easy, it's simple on the go. You can find my podcast on Spotify at Tuesday Table Talk. And then I haven't uploaded anything on my YouTube for a couple weeks because I like to take my videos from Instagram and put them on there. But the whole live thing is set up is kind of weird. But anyway, if you want just a shareable link in terms of anything else, this video will also be up on YouTube as well. And I think that's pretty much it. Again, I talked about tonight about Thirst Trap. This is going to be one for me that I just really sit and reflect on. I'll probably have to just, maybe it was just for me. I don't know if it was for anybody else or anything else, but it's really just a reflective measure of where I'm sitting at. Where am I drawing water from? So again, I thank you guys for tuning in. Whoever will listen to this either on Spotify or watch this, play this back. 2 weeks. 2 weeks will be another brand new episode of Tuesday Table Talk. Maybe I'll throw out something out on Instagram and see if there's a topic that really has been on people's minds, or anything that they really want to talk about. Or feel free to shoot me a DM if there's any other questions that you guys may have. I think that's pretty much it. I keep rambling on for like 5 minutes when I'm in closing, because I never really know how to close. I promise I'm going to get better at closing. But again, that's pretty much it for me. If you hopped in here late or missed some of the video, as soon as this is done, this will be up on Spotify. This will be up on my Instagram, so you guys can play it back, watch back. Don't feel bad for hopping in here late. I know everybody's got lives, everybody's got things to do. So again, I thank you guys for just tuning in. And I will see you guys on the next episode of Tuesday Table Talk. Peace. We out.